Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Twilight Zone review. Today it is Season 5, Episode 12, 90 Years Without Slumbering, written by Richard DeRoy, and starring Ed Wynn as Sam Forstman. And this is a solid Twilight Zone episode. I enjoyed it. You could argue that it's a bit slow-moving and that maybe the plot doesn't justify 25 minutes of running time, but it has a likable performance from Ed Wynn, and the twist is different from Twilight Zone and perhaps not what we would expect as the audience, so it worked for me. We start with our main character, Sam, and he's an elderly gentleman, and he's singing and he's working on this old clock, and he seems to be pretty happy. Everything seems to be normal, and his granddaughter comes up to visit him, and she's concerned because he didn't come down for dinner, and all he's been doing is working on this clock. And at this point, Sam tells her that he's okay and he's just resting for a little while, but he can't sleep. He's very concerned about this clock and how slow it runs, and he says he needs to wind it. And he actually talks to this clock, so it seems like this guy might be a little bit obsessed with this clock at this point. So after the opening narration, we go to the next scene, and Marnie and her husband, Doug, are talking, and they're having a conversation, and Doug is concerned. He thinks that Sam needs to go see a psychiatrist because he's so concerned with this clock all the time. He says it's not normal. So Sam walks in on this, and he resists for a while, but then he finally says, I'll go if it'll make you happy. So he goes to see this psychiatrist, and this is a charming and pleasant conversation, and we find out that the clock is very old, and it was made around the same time that Sam was born. And we also find out that before Sam leaves, he says, when the clock stops ticking, I will pass away. So now we understand why this guy always winds this clock and worries about it keeping going, because he really believes that this to be true. So we go to the next scene after the doctor had recommended that Sam get rid of the clock, but he's not having it. He has these two men bring the clock downstairs, and then he collapses and passes out, which was kind of a strange scene, but it turns out it was a false alarm. He recovers and he says it must not be time quite yet. So Doug and Marnie come home, and they see the clock is just sitting there in the middle of the room, and it really doesn't look great there, I have to admit. And Doug and Marnie tell him the doctor said the clock should go, so Sam yells, fine, I'll sell the clock. So we go to the next scene, and Sam is there with Marnie. I'm assuming Doug's at work, but I don't know. And they have a guest named Carol, and we find out that she is the neighbor that lives, I think it's next door, and she has an interest in old antiques, and she says that she'll buy the clock. So Sam says, well, that's a good idea. You can pay me whenever you have the money, and I'll be able to come over every day and take care of it. So it's like a compromise. The clock will be out of the house to make Doug and Marnie happy, and he'll be able to still see it every day. So everything seems to be going well until we go to a day where Sam says, I'm going over to wind the clock, and he finds out that he can't because Carol and her family are on vacation. And then I have to say, so Sam says he's okay with it, but he's really not. We get this weird scene where Sam can't sleep, and they actually show an image of a clock kind of going back and forth, which I thought was kind of weird and unnecessary, a little bit of overkill. I think we get the point, but I guess it was okay. So Sam can't sleep. He goes outside, and he's looking through the window at this clock, and he freaks out. He actually breaks the window with something. I'm not sure what that was, but the police naturally come, and they tell him you can't go in there, and Sam insists. He says, I have to wind this clock. You don't understand. But of course the officer doesn't let him, and he at least takes him home. He doesn't take the old guy in, which I thought was nice. So now Sam is in bed, and this is kind of where we get the twist of the episode, as Marnie says goodnight, and it kind of gives the impression, and I think they do a good job with this in the episode, that Sam might not make it, that he might be passing away. He looks just really tired, and it seems like he's kind of accepting, because he can't wind the clock, that this is going to happen. So then a spirit form of Sam comes out, and this is a pretty good effect. It looks pretty good, I have to say, for the time it was made. And Sam starts talking to himself, and the spirit tries to convince him, this is it for you. You were told when the clock stops ticking that you'll be gone. But now Sam realizes, he says, that's kind of silly and ridiculous. I don't need the clock to stay around. He says he has a grandchild on the way because his granddaughter is pregnant, which we found out earlier in the episode. And he says, I'm going to be around for a while. So the spirit basically goes away, and Sam kind of wins out here against himself, I guess you would say, and he is okay now. So the twist is really that there was no supernatural element to the clock. In Twilight Zone, you would probably think that there is something going on with the clock. So I thought that was a twist at work. It kind of plays on your expectations and goes the opposite way. I was satisfied about it. And then we get a final nice scene between Sam and his granddaughter Marnie, and they just talk, and he says that when the clock stopped, he was born again. So he realizes he doesn't really need the clock to go on. So a nice ending. Like I said, this episode's a little slow moving and padded in a few places, but Ed Wynn is charming in the episode, and it's just a solid episode to watch. So I give 90 Years Without Slumbering a 3 out of 5. Definitely an episode I'd recommend to check out once. It's pleasant enough. So 3 out of 5 for 90 Years Without Slumbering, and as always, thank you very much for watching.